The first is that to be written. Of course, some literary works are not written. They can be even visual or not written in the more traditional sense in a book or in a compilation, etc. These are just a prototype, the ideal standard that we're talking about here, so that we know in which category of literature a certain piece of work belongs to. Now, it has to be written. The standard has to be written. It has to be written carefully, using careful use of language, including features such as creative metaphors, well-turned phrases, elegant syntax. Syntax is the composition of sentences. The sentences cannot be very simple, it has to be elegant, complex, and beautiful. It may have rhymes, alliteration, meter, these are for poetry. And they are in a literary genre. Genre, not genre, but genre, because this is a French word. It can be poetry, prose fiction, or drama. If it does not belong to this, for the time being, again, for the era that we are working, that we are living in, they are not supposed. This kind of works that do not belong in a literary genre cannot be a prototype. Sinetron cannot be a prototype in literature because it is also a movie, a film series to be more exact, a soap opera. That is the genre of Sinetron. A soap opera is not exactly a genre in literature, so you cannot study those and say these are the literature. No, they have literature qualities. They have literary qualities such as character, plot, character development, story development, setting, etc. that can be studied like a literature, but they cannot be but the cinetrons cannot be an ideal standard in literature. Yes, and second, they have to be aesthetic. They are read aesthetically by the readers and are intended by the author to be read aesthetically. The author write them with the intention that this will be read aesthetically. Aesthetically means in an art way, in an artful way, in a beautiful way. They are written in a beautiful way and are expected to be read as an art by the reader. So there are uh, two sides to it. By the author, it is meant to be read as an art, as a, and by the reader, it has to be read as an art, as a pursuit of beauty, to be understood as beautiful language. Yeah, you try to find the enjoyment or the beauty in them. Not like when you read a direction on a piece of paper, how to submit your exercises. First, open Google Drive. Second, uh, put your file in the Google Drive or on Sipajar. No, these are not literary works. These are just directions, you see. They are not meant to be read aesthetically. And the third is that they contain many weak implicatures and are deliberately somewhat open in interpretation. This is the important part. They are open to many interpretation. Now let's go over those points. Now, literature as a text, as a written text, the written text, the prototype has to be written. I think it's very obvious. For it to be considered as an ideal standard of literature, you can study Sinetron in a literary way, yes. So don't 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 get the wrong impression that if it is not a prototype, you cannot study them in literary studies. No, you can still study those who are not the prototypes as long as they have degrees of resemblance to that prototype. For example, a very new drama is coming out. It is very surreal, surreal, strange. It has very strange characters. It has very strange plot. This drama script has very strange settings that is not natural. But since you can find some resemblance to that drama, to the ones that is considered a prototype, let's say for example, a surreal one is Waiting for Godot. If you ever read, if you ever heard about it, Waiting for Godot. It it is meant to be quite surreal, uh, meaning strange and non-realistic. But if you find the what you call it, the resemblance to Waiting for Godot, and we consider Waiting for Godot is a prototype, then you can study that new drama script that is very strange as a piece of literature by looking at the similarities or resemblance of it to the prototype, which is Waiting for Godot. In the same vein, you can also study Bollywood movies because you want to connect to their literary resemblances, because there is a prototype of Shakespeare which themes are used by the Bollywood movies. For example, the themes of betrayal, the themes of love, the theme of being romantic, or the themes of missed chances, for example, lost chances, for example. Now, if it is used a qualifier or descriptive terminology with the word literature, this is proof of that kind of work not being a prototype. Example, oral literature. Now, if you put something with the word literature, it means that it is not the prototype. Modern literature. This is another qualifier or descriptive terminology that is used with the word literature. It means that someone has to explain something first for it to be literature, and this does not work. Or literary non-fiction, because non-fictions are not usually considered literature, like a piece of information about how to avoid COVID-19. That is not a literary work. Yeah, that is just a non-fiction directions. Now, the second part is about aestheticism. It has to be read by readers and written by authors for aesthetic reasons, by the readers for enjoyment as an art, written by the author for art, for beauty, that is aesthetic, in the pursuit of beauty. And now the openness, it has to be open to many interpretation. Now the literary works as a prototype may not be intended to have a very clear cut interpretation. That is, it has weak implicature. Now, there are terms that is said there in the article, that is the explicature and implicature. Now, these are all semantics, meaning that there are studies in linguistics that we will not cover in our class, but basically explicature means that something that is very explicit. Yes? You know explicit versus implicit? Explicit is something that is very obvious, yeah, very obviously meant, and implicit is something that is most likely a bit hidden in the term, in the words. For example, uh, the article uses the example of that park is not far away from here. That park is not far from here. Now, the explicit meaning is that, according to me, the one who said it, the park is not far away. It is close by. That is the explicature. The implicature is, for example, you have to get a context for something to have implicit meaning. For example, you ask your father to drive you, to take you to the park. And then your father's answer is that that park is not far from here. So the implicit meaning is that you can go to the park yourself because your father thinks that you don't need to be driven there, you just walk. Yeah, it's not far away. So this is the implicature. Now, in this case, the implicature is very strong because the context is uh, very defined. you ask your dad to take you to the park. So this means you can go to the park yourself. This is the implicature. But what if the context is very open? For example, ask somebody the meaning of the park to them. For example, there's this person and you ask them, what is the meaning of that? What is your personal meaning of that park that is next to your house? And then he answered, after a long thought, after thinking for a while, he answered, the park is not far from me. Now, the context is that this person met his future wife in that park. The park was near his house. The park is also where he buried his wife. The park is also where his daughter first learned to ride a bicycle. The park is also where his children say goodbye to him when they have already grown up and they want to leave this person. So the park has a lot of open context. Now we call that weak implicature, meaning it is open to many interpretation. There is no strong implicature given because that person has so many history with the park. Just to say that it is about distance. Yes, so that is the explanation for that. And now, like here, for it to be prototype, the readers are invited to have many interpretations instead of one or sole correct interpretation. The quote from the article goes that not for the information you will take away, but for the associations, feelings, attitude, and ideas. Now, these are the focus of the prototype, is that you look at the resemblance, meaning the associations, the feelings, attitudes, and ideas in this prototype that these words and their reference arouse within us. Now, this is the example about the cookbook versus the cooking poem. There is the example that the cookbook cannot be a prototype. It cannot be a very good literary ideal or standard because the association is for it to be nonfiction. The feelings is for it to be a cookbook. People's attitude must take it as a cookbook, not a literary poem. However, the cooking poem, although they have the same words, although they have the same, very similar meanings even, and etc., although they have high degree of similarity, the association when this poem, the cooking poem, is written in the form of a poem, you can see directly the literary qualities of it, the feeling that and the attitude that people will have towards it because this is not written in a cookbook is that this is an art and the ideas presented, although they are the very same that they are presented in a cookbook, the ideas are treated in a more literary way because it is written as a poem. Therefore, the cooking poem is more of a prototype than the cookbook. Now, again, I will repeat that this is not a criterial approach. If it's criterial approach, you will just say the cooking book is not literature, while the cooking poem is literature. The prototype approach will say that the cooking poem has more degree of being a literary prototype that is closer to the standard and ideal of a literary work, while the cookbook has less degree, less resemblance, less associations, feelings, attitudes, and ideas that allows it to be called a literary work, which is quite obviously when you come upon a cookbook by Gordon Ramsay, you do not consider it as a piece of literature that you study in the introduction to literature class, right? The way we explain it is that it has less degree, but can you still study that cookbook as a literary Literary piece of work, yes. If you use the prototype approach, you can do so. However, there will be less things to be understood from it. So I hope this explanation makes you understand. The thing is, this article is in no way is simple. That is why my explanation for it is long, and I try to use slow words and easy words as much as I can. That is why the explanation is very long, and I'm sorry for that. I hope my explanations in the future will be shorter. So I guess that is all for my explanation. Don't forget to write notes on it or summary for it because my explanation is long and winding. So thank you for your attention and goodbye.